the Nutrimedical Report, Clay and Iron Show for the 21st of August, Tuesday, and our special guest, Alan Watt. Your analysis, Alan, this is hard to believe, but literally while the sleight of hand is going on, they're trying to lull us to sleep, telling us it's not happening, little sheep, nothing's happening. And they're actually literally signing, I believe, the last documents as the President of Mexico goes back to his storm-struck land with the Hurricane Dean, to the actual dissolution of the countries in North America and the formation of a new feudal state with less freedom for us to move, and more for the feudalization of this Western world to create supra-rich with the rest of us as serfs in this new technocracy of the 21st century. Tell us your analysis of what's going on in Quebec, Canada.
Well, it's a matter of memory. Most people don't have much memory left today, and they forget that the same media that's poo-pooing the idea of amalgamation broadcast nationwide on the CBC in Canada in 2005 in March, when they signed the first open publicly signed agreement in Waco, Texas, with the two prime ministers and the president. And the Council on Foreign Relations, which is the American member for the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which runs this whole globalist show, it's called the parallel government, in fact, according to Carol Quigley. They came out on television the same day and said that they drafted up this whole scheme for amalgamation. Now, the Council on Foreign Relations is not a governmental body. It's actually an NGO, a non-governmental organization with allegiance to Britain. And Margaret Thatcher mentioned it in her speech at Massey Hall in Toronto in the early 90s. She said, all the ex-members of the high positions in government have formed a parallel government. She says we all know each other, we're hardened, we know each other, we know the policies, and we're far more efficient than the one that you vote in. The idea being, in the Royal Institute for International Affairs, that democracy is just too cumbersome to handle. They can't get anything done with bickering and egos and party politics, and therefore the elite, who know better, you see, should take charge of things and make the future, plan the future, and make it happen with this parallel government that Professor Carol Quigley talks about. So we're just going through the motions here as they amalgamate something that was planned over 100 years ago.
Yeah, in fact, I recall back over 100 years ago in Nova Scotia, Canada, when Joseph Howe actually vied with his globalist friends, even back at that time in 1867, not to join the rest of Canada, but to actually, excuse me, not to join the rest of Canada, but to actually join, quote, New England to become a Grigger Republic. And remember the Polk crisis of 54, 40 or fight, the idea that they're literally trying to take over the resources. We have the 70% of the freshwater resources on the planet, probably the largest amount of untapped oil and gas resources on the planet, the largest resources for gold and uranium, pretty well in this part of the world. And with the changes in the global climate, it's very probable that a good part of the, quote, the temperate zone for growing food will move north toward Canada as the global warming occurs, not because of carbon dioxide, but because of geothermal and solar activity that's cyclical.
Yes.
Into a warming cycle that's going to force populations to move north.
That's right.
And that these are realities that they know about. They know about it years and centuries before. They have the best of scientists, the best of equipment, and they don't tell us anything. So they pretend that they're actually allowing us to make judgments and choices when there really is no choice at all, because, as I said before, they control both sides of the belly of the same snake.
Yes, they do. They have archives of histories, archives of information on the weather, and records which are unavailable to the public. And because we live such a short time, our lifespan is fairly short, we depend on our parents to pass information on to us, and today very few parents pass anything on to their children. In fact, they don't know much to pass on, to be honest with you, and that's the problem.
I want to also repeat here, this is what you're talking about is so vital, and I often will get into teleological and scientific arguments with people that are highly compartmentalized into one little area, whether I was working with the military or others. because I believe that it's important to know as much as you can about everything. So I have an insatiable desire to know science, technology, geopolitics, music, anything that I can possibly grab onto, and then pull it all together into a worldview that it can explain. And that's what I'm trying to convey in the show. So I don't try to overwhelm you with you, because I only give a small portion of what I do know. Zone 1, which is, I try to do good research every day. You'll see the news come up, and you read these articles. If you don't believe me, just read them yourself, and then cross-check it, fact-check it with others. Zone 2 is classified information, and in a sense, you're a whistleblower of the Illuminati. They've tried to recruit you and me because they know that we know a lot of their special secrets. There are a lot of cult organizations on Earth that have been taken over at the highest levels. Pretty well all religions are controlled by the Illuminati and their ilk. In other words, parallel kind of Illuminist high priest organizations, and they all follow the same Masonic doctrines. They all use very similar symbols, hand signs, etc. Down through the ages, they're all extremely similar.
Yep.
That's why you'll even see the logos. And you're the premier expert on this. And the reason is, if you don't understand the vocabulary and the alphabet of the globalist puppet masters, you really won't know what their agenda is, which is always sleight of hand, always smoke and mirrors. And so a tiny fraction of the population, by fooling us into making sure that we think we have no power, that they literally take the power from us by herding us like lemmings.
Yes.
And that's what's so dangerous about this North American Union. They're telling us, oh, it's not happening, we're talking, and in fact, they're ready to actually shove this massive highway, which is a military highway, 10-mile right-of-way, over the largest aquifer in North America, 200-foot right-of-way below ground, to actually put high-speed rail, pipelines, gas, everything you can think of. And it's going to have concrete walls, so you can't get off this thing either. They're going to have their rest areas in the centers, or in areas that will be completely controlled by the system. And they're going to rewild. That's what they want to have, concrete city barriers with highly compressed super cities, and rewilding the areas of North America to turn into a grand park once they reduce the world population. This is their plan in every region around the world. They put it in their documents, and when they say what they are going to do, they usually do it. They are behind schedule because we're becoming aware, and we are not passive sheep, so much as they've tried to convince themselves with their architecture, and they're putting it out in the open. They are trying to say to themselves, well, because the sheep don't know that they're about to be slaughtered, then they're proving to us that they are sheep, even though they look like us. But the fact is, we are not sheep, that they think they're a supra species, and they're a bunch of supra psychotics is what they are. So tell us more about what you think is going to come out of this,
Well, they've told us, in fact, tonight on my blurb. My blurb is an educational talk. I'll give you the proof of it from their own mouths.
Tell me.
And I'll play something on the air, and you can take that to the bank, because it's from those involved. When they told us what the whole plan was, the amalgamation of all the economies, the free travel of all workers, labour, that's written into the GATT Treaty as well.
It was planned over a decade ago. Right?
Yes, a long time ago.
Yeah. We're going to be back. We're going to take more analysis of this because it is almost completed. In fact, I think they're online for 2010, but I've heard they're fast-tracking it, so they'll have it pretty well done by next year, 2008, with the chipping of the population in North America. You better be aware, people. This is coming quickly. We'll be back in a moment with Alan Watt. Your questions, 866-582-9933. Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report. Our special guest, Alan Watt. Your questions and comments are welcome at 866-582-9933. Please continue with your analysis, as it's always sharper than a razor blade. Well, Cutting Through the Matrix, literally.com. CuttingThroughTheMatrix.com. You've got great materials. Do visit there, everyone. Do get the materials. Do support Alan, as he's one of the shining lights cutting through the garbage out there. And believe me, there's lots of garbage inside and outside all the churches, political establishments, universities, corporations. Literally, this festering cancer is everywhere. It's not just in isolated places.
Yes. Yeah, we're coming to the end of an age, and the big boys know it themselves. And they know what happens at the end of an age when you have confusion and massive corruption, and they've planned to continue the corruption run by themselves for the next million years, according to Charles Galton Darwin in his own book. So they plan the future. They always have planned the future, and the trick is to keep us in ignorance and guide us like sheep into the next pasture. But however, in the early 90s, when they were signing the international general agreement on tariffs and trades, that allows any company outside your own country to ask for permission to set up a factory in your country, regardless of your health and safety requirements and your standards of wages. And if you turn them down because you have higher standards, they can actually fine the country and rake in millions of dollars just for applying and being turned down.
Yeah,
That's
isn't that
how crazy
unbelievable?
this is.
This is how, and again, working as an occupational doctor in 3 provinces and licensed in 4 states in the United States, I can tell you, working in Georgia, Illinois, Colorado for the last 15 years, seeing what goes on, which is so corrupt, you just can't believe it. Literally coming up to doctors like me and saying, now, doctor, you've got to discharge these people, but if you do, some of them may die prematurely or die really quickly. Others may be permanently disabled. Others will be destitute because they'll lose their disability or not even have medical care coverage. And that is how the corporations run. The patient is not the worker. The patient is the corporation. And that's what's going on. And if they do this, just like when they exported business to Asia, we're getting it coming back in spades. And we have these fools like this twit on, I believe it was Fox News, talking about the fact that, well, we don't want to have non-poisonous food. It might affect our prices at Walmart. You can see that clip if you go there on Jeff Rentz's site. It's just, he has great video clips. It just drives you. You just say, I know what they do. They want us as professionals to be administered, not to have constitutional rights, not to stick up for citizens, not to be whistleblowers against the violations of the rights or the dangers to the citizens from dangerous vaccines, dangerous medicines, dangerous environmental hazards. And we, as the keepers of society of this knowledge, and it's often science-based, they want us to be silent. Well, I'm not going to be silent. I'm hoping my colleagues will get a backbone transplant and decide that, let's say, it won't be bringing Mexico or these other third world countries up to our standards, which is higher and is not as high as it should be, but certainly higher than it would be in places like China, where 600 people per day either die or get permanent total disability in China. That's per day in China. 600 per day is the number. That's unbelievable.
It's a race to the bottom. You see, what the whole idea is to create the new global plantation. As they start culling off the population and bring it down to more manageable levels according to themselves, they're terrified of people at the bottom. And even from the days of Thomas Malthus, they were doing statistics and exaggerating them always.
Oh, yeah.
And to terrify their own class into the necessity of culling off the excess, what they call the useless eaters. And in this society that's coming up, according to their own records, they plan a planned society, like family planning. You won't be born unless they need you for something.
Oh, in fact, they're going to plan. This is what I've been told by the secret inside organizations. Their plan is by 2020 to 2025, no one will be born except they go through polar body analysis in a laboratory petri dish. There'll be no wild reproduction by women having babies anymore. It'll all be in a lab, and you'll go down to the lab to pick up your baby after so many months.
That's right.
That's what they plan. If you
go into the history of this, and you realize that people like Aldous Huxley, that wrote Brave New World in the 1930s, put this whole agenda forward because he was part of the ruling elite that wrote predictive programming along these lines. To make it familiar to us, the whole idea becomes familiar and we accept it. Yeah. So they knew in the 1930s they would have this new genetically enhanced, supposedly purpose-made, ideal designed human for a different kind of task.
Right, it starts in books like Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, but it also continues, right, to Meet the Robinsons, which is his child's movie that came out this year, and Spider-Man, now the third in the series. All of these superheroes are all, quote, genetically enhanced versions of their super soldier program that had its genesis in the ideas in 1930s Germany to develop a super enhanced soldier And I was actually introduced firsthand to the actual plan, which is to have an androgynous female super soldier with chimeric genes imported from jackals, eagles, and other species to make them super beings so they could run at up to 30 miles per hour, jump 25 feet, carry a 300-pound backpack, and go without food or sleep for a week. And could move so quickly they could rip your heart out of your chest without you even knowing that it hit you. That's what they're talking about. Wet wire directly into a battle operational supercomputer matrix, totally operationally controlled, wet wire directly to see what they see, hear what they hear, and have the kill reflex under the command and control of a supercomputer AI system. That's what they're planning. That combined with ROVs, remote operated vehicles, mech warriors, super nanotech body armor, and brain-actuated weapons ordnance systems. This is a reality. It's not something that's yet future. They've already been doing it. They're already wet wiring and doing work in places like Galveston, Texas with baboons. They've been doing underground laboratory research in facilities in Colorado, Arizona, in Nevada, where they're actually building species. They have laboratories in Costa Rica and as well in South America, where they're creating humanzees and other cross-generated species with imported genes, just experimenting and throwing away the remains. And a lot of the weird, quote, strange creatures that people are often seeing escaping these labs are actually the if you want to call it the escape remains of these chimeric genetic monstrosities. Research at places like the University of Chicago in the 1970s actually did this work in conjunction with Oxford University, and many of these so-called grown inside animal uteri chimeric monstrosities are at a hospital north of London. This is classified information, but you need to know to connect the dots. They've been doing this for decades, and they're getting ready to release literally the bottomless pit. And these Pandora's box of genetic supra beings is on its way.
Yeah, there's no doubt on that. To say they knew it in the 30s, and I've no doubt they were practicing and playing with this long, long before. In fact, if you read Rutherford's memoirs, Rutherford was a top mathematician in Britain in the late 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s. This man was employed, he said, on a project to do with human genes. Now, why would you need a mathematician to work on human genes unless you'd found them all already? Yeah. And at that time, supposedly, it was only a theory about the gene in the first place. So these guys have been working on this for a long, long time, the perfection of that which they claim was left imperfect, and that's us.
Well, part of the thing is that they have sources of information. I happen to know that the greatest library on the planet, the greatest by a very large margin on the planet, with ancient libraries incorporated, is the Vatican Library. That library incorporates books going back through ancient ages, and you have to remember that all the globalist organizations, if you look at the dollar, it says Novus Order Seclorum. It means toward the new secular order of the ages. They're talking about bridging from the end of this age to the next. They're the keepers of the sacred knowledge. The profane will be swept away, which is why they're moving the international treaties of the seas is to move inland waterways like the Three Gorges Dam in China. The major transportation routes are moving to the center of the continent. It's not just through greed. It's because they know the continental margins will be struck with major cataclysms, with superstorms. It'll be category 5, 6, and 7, super tsunamis, and they know the coastal populations are, they're not going to warn them to move out of the way of this disaster, because 80 to 90% of the population of Earth lives within 100 miles of a coast of a major continent. And that's how evil these monstrosities are.
The big builders.
That's right. And they're ready with their underground cities. They're ready with their torsion field analysis devices that have picked up underground caverns and dormant volcanoes. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to the Nutrimedical Report, and you can call for quick advice on specific nutraceuticals, or you can get a wellness consultation. Again, the advice, if you want to do a quick email or call the 888-212-8871. Do visit our site. We're adding new features all the time, making it much more user-friendly. If you have suggestions, do call. You can call at 888-212-8871. Also visit clayandiron.com. We do have the DVD that was cut out of the Vancouver 9/11 conference, my presentation on the origins of the New World Order. I was asked specifically by Wayne Pronte, but the later organization actually actually censored this out. You need to know that this needs not to happen. We need to stop sniping at patriots that are actually sticking our neck out at great danger, releasing the truth, and asking the right questions, like called Charlie Sheening the issue, like Alan Watt. And then the last 40 minutes of the talk was 30 anomalies that indicate the use of exotic weapons, including thermate, probable use of micronukes and exotic fourth-generation nuclear devices for the demolition of the World Trade Center. And the reason is their plan is pandemics. The reason is dirty bombs and micronukes taking up much larger sections of cities. In fact, this week, starting actually yesterday, they're doing a simulation in Portland, Oregon. They just finished on Friday a bioweapon simulation of 5 or 6 states in Memphis, Tennessee. And the SCO, the Russians and the Chinese, just finished a major transnational, quote, anti-terrorism drills. This is occurring around the world, and this psychotic meme, M-E-M-E, of fear terrorism is creating a global matrix in a prison world, not a freer world, not a world that's safer, and they're doing this because it's part of the game. Your analysis of this, what's going on worldwide?
There's no doubt. We all began on this terrorism kick in the 90s, in fact, when they were having demonstrations across Canada of either man-made or natural disasters, and we saw the multi-jurisdictional task forces, the combined police, military, and even the fire brigades were involved, and the ambulances. And in Allison, Ontario, they were having mock drills in '95 about coming terrorism and so on, which was unheard of. The Cold War was over. We never had even these practices during the Cold War. And it was all because they planned to reduce the population. And plagues, of course, pandemics especially, have been really talked about in great detail in their own books over the last 100 years.
Yeah, well, look at Mariel. Look at what happened with hoof and mouth disease. Yeah. This is actually a purposeful release from a ridiculous facility that was not properly funded as a negative pressure force level facility. It has to be negative pressure so the organism wouldn't get out. There were actually drafts in the building. It's just ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And then we have this spread in Operation BioShield, not to just dozens, but literally hundreds of facilities now in North America have fourth-generation weapons and beyond that are in not adequate facilities, not adequate security. You could walk in there and walk out with a vial of something that could literally wipe out millions, and yet they call us and say it's more secure. It's just absolutely ridiculous. What happened in Katrina is they put a padlock and a chain lock on the fence around a facility carrying BSL, should have been BSL 2 only certification, had a BSL 4 weapons in the laboratory with no guarding and no protection when Katrina hit, and they didn't even go in there for days. This could have spread out in the water. It could have gone anywhere. This kind of, and they'll say, oh, it got out by chance. Come on. They're doing it on purpose. They're getting ready. They want to have bioterrorism. They want to have pandemics. This partnership agreement that they're talking about, one of the top agenda was security of borders. Their plan is to shut down the grid, to set up perimeters around cities. And I challenged the FEMA director and the directors in Canada, because it's the same, believe it or not. They're not having the open dialogue, but it's precisely the same. A minister of a province and 2 of the senior ministers in their cabinet can literally declare a state of emergency on their own without any specific reason stated to the public. They just simply activate the emergency broadcast system, and then they can force vaccination, quarantine, and separate you from your family and take away property at any time they want to. That's in Canada. It's not. We're not just talking about the States. This is also happening in New Zealand, Australia, the UK. It's also happening in Africa, and these drills are occurring in the SCO countries in Asia. So they're getting ready globally to do all this stuff to all of us.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's publicized. For years and years, they've brought on the so-called experts, again, professors, who've told us that the plague is just around the corner, just must happen by chance.
Well, I need to respond here, because I cornered Dr. Henry L. Nyman, and I'm going to say this because he wouldn't come back on the show, and the reason is I got the documents March 16th, 1997, and I have a background in bioterrorism, taught the course February 12, 2002 to the North American and European and Australian American Academy of Environmental Medicine, and also our special op in Delta, and I worked with these guys for almost a decade in Colorado in various operations that I did, including Operation Top Off and Dark Winter. And I can tell you, when I challenged Dr. Nyman, who is the top virologist in terms of recombination. His theory is solid. He knows exactly, literally on a piece of paper, how you can recombine and form the new versions. All he has to have is the data, which they've been supposedly hiding, and the WHO has not been demanding data from these countries. And they know that these viruses literally have the same DNA sequences as the 1918 human-pig hybrid flu, which is a bioweapon of almost 100 years ago. And these incorporated new gene sequences, including the NS1 gene deletions, that make it 30 times more lethal. And it's a hemorrhagic flu that can grow neurotropically in the brain or any other organ system, so you don't even need a cough. You can get it in your brain, it can grow. After 8 days, all of a sudden you can seize, start bleeding from every orifice, and be dead in 45 minutes. That's what we're talking about, a 70 to 100% mortality rate if this gets efficient. And you know there's only 2 amino acids in particular positions, 226 and 228 on the H gene. And the reason why he won't come back on is he knows I had the actual documents. I have the gene sequences, I have the actual letters. So this is not my opinion that they've created this. I got the documents from scientists that smuggled it out of Basel, Switzerland, the World Health Organization, the same bastards globally that are funding this through the Rothschilds to create pandemics to kill us, including XMDR-TB in South Africa, which is totally resistant to all drug therapies. It kills in 14 to 21 days, and we have lots of other nasties cooking, ready to be released.
Yeah, that's the tragedy of the average person's mindset. They've been lulled into a real false sense of security. They turn on TV, their favorite shows are on, everything seems happy and normal.
And the reason why I say this about the scientists like Dr. Nyman, who's an excellent scientist, is they need to get a backbone and say, look, we know that the World Health Organization are acting illegally. They're acting scientifically evil. They're actually hiding the data. They're behind the scheme to actually spread this. In fact, I mentioned this, and I'm sure it was picked up by Ben Fulford, who made his announcements on Jeff Rentz, that I got the actual data, the information from my sources, that the SARS was a bioweapon race-specific virus, and that the avian flu is specifically an Asian-specific flu to kill off by a very high proportion Asians, which would include not only Asian peoples but Russians because of the high mix of Mongolian genes in the eastern areas of Russia. So this is designed, people, you better get this straight, the ultimate policies of the globalist New World Order is eugenics. It's to kill you. It's to kill you, it's to dumb you down first, and then to kill you, to take your property and put you in the ground and destroy you and your progeny forever.
Yeah, and they've been open about this. They've actually given talks from the Porton Downs facilities, biowarfare laboratories in Britain. And they've given talks to reporters who've gone in, and they've admitted, yes, we've got lots of race-specific, ethno-specific bioweapons all ready to go.
And you know where the main facility is for it? The main facility was not only Russia, a lot of that was imported to Israel, right beside the Dimona reactor site, and the largest facility in the world for it is in central Israel, where the race-specific virus research laboratory is. Mm-hmm. That's classified information, people. You need to know that they can figure they can dial the death of specific peoples with gene sequences so they can kill specific segments of the population based on specific gene sequences. That's how bad this is.
And where we are now is a crisis point, because people have to either decide for themselves, is it humanity itself worth keeping as it is, or else going off in a different direction, or allowing them to have their awful, wicked way. And that's where we are. It's a simple decision. Do we stop this, or do we allow it to happen? Because these guys at the top are psychopathic monsters, interbred through thousands of generations, and they believe they have the right to do with us as they will. We are the market. That's why they call the European Union the common market. Animals are in the market.
Well, it says in the book of Revelation that the bodies and souls of men were sold, and that's on the top of the list, by the way, because your soul, your body, your consciousness, your identity is about to be stolen, people, unless you stand up. But you can choose your timeline. You can choose a future where you have life extension and a safe, healthy world without pollution and zero-point energy and all kinds of other technologies. Or you can choose to live in a matrix, but you have to start living eternity today. Stand up and speak out, or you will be silenced forever. Thank you, Alan. And again, your program is going to be coming up soon, too. Tell us about that.
That'll be on RBN, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern.
Excellent. And you'll be back on regularly because you cut through the matrix. CuttingThroughTheMatrix.com. We'll be back tomorrow with another amazing program. Do stay tuned. We'll be back with Dr. Ed Vieira, the militia and the North American Union tomorrow.
Amalgamation broadcast nationwide on the CBC in Canada in 2005 in March, when they signed the first open publicly signed agreement in Waco, Texas, with the two prime ministers and the president. And the Council on Foreign Relations, which is the American member for the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which runs this whole globalist show, it's called the parallel government, in fact, according to Carl Quigley. They can...
Welcome to the Nutrimedical Report, Clay and Iron Show for the 21st of August, Tuesday, and our special guest, Alan Watt. Your analysis, Alan, this is hard to believe, but literally while the sleight of hand is going on, they're trying to lull us to sleep, telling us it's not happening, little sheep. Nothing's happening. And they're actually literally signing, I believe, the last documents as the President of Mexico goes back to his storm-struck land with the Hurricane Dean, to the actual dissolution.
We know the policies, and we're far more efficient than the one that you vote in. The idea being, in the Royal Institute for International Affairs, that democracy is just too cumbersome to handle. They can't get anything done with bickering and egos and party politics, and therefore the elite, who know better, you see, should take charge of things and make the future, plan the future, and make it happen with this parallel government that Professor Carl Quigley talks about. So we're just going through the motions here as they amalgamate something. They met on television the same day and said that they drafted up this whole scheme for amalgamation. Now, the Council on Foreign Relations is not a governmental body. It's actually an NGO, a non-governmental organization with allegiance to Britain. And Margaret Thatcher mentioned it in her speech at Massey Hall in Toronto in the early 90s. She said, all the ex-members of the high positions in governments have formed a parallel government. She says we all know each other, we're hardened, we know each other.
Of the countries in North America and the formation of a new feudal state with less freedom for us to move, and more for the feudalization of this Western world to create supra-rich with the rest of us as serfs in this new technocracy of the 21st century. Tell us your analysis of what's going on in Quebec, Canada.
Well, it's a matter of memory. Most people don't have much memory left today, and they forget that the same media that's poo-pooing the idea